I'd like to share my suffering story with you and how the message and the practice of Advaita Vedanta and self-inquiry helped heal it. Because there was not one thing that I did not try prior to this to get underneath the severe suffering that I was experiencing. It was in the 2008 housing crash where I feared losing everything. 95% of my industry was going out of business or bankrupt, and I was right there alongside it. And due to my conditioning, this did not sit well with me. This ripped the fabric of understanding within me, and it sent me into a tailspin that I never dreamt was possible. I ended up in a very dark, deep place. Some might call it the dark night of the soul. At the time, I had none of this type of understanding that I do now. It was just hell. It was empty. It was void. It was dark. It was hopeless, helpless. And because of this, it started to settle into my body, in which every cell in my body felt fear. So for almost 15 years, I set off on a trek to try to be happy again. And I tried literally everything. I tried different types of meditation, like transcendental meditation and breathing techniques. I tried yoga. I did talk therapy. I was in and off of pharmaceuticals for anxiety and the sense of doom. And I was microdosing for a while. I would also tried heroic doses of LSD. I did everything, but nothing would get underneath it. Nothing would get to the root of the problem. It's not to say that these did not temporarily cure my issue. It did. But there was always this nagging, this sense within me, this doubt that it still did not get to the root of the problem. And that's where Advaita came into play. I mean, when it was first set in my lap, I had no idea that this would be the knowledge that would set me free. But after studying it and understanding it, how it could get underneath all of the issues and to the root and dissolve the root and start to eliminate it from the root out, is when the healing actually started. So I would like to put this in a diagram for you on how this works. This is my understanding. This is my direct experience after collapsing into myself about 2.5 years ago. It rooted the problem out. There is no more fear in this body. Like I mentioned earlier, every cell in this body was fearful. It did not like to be here and now. All it wanted to do is run somewhere else because it thought that elsewhere there would be a solution. But it wasn't until I turned within and sat myself in myself and remembered who I actually am. And who I actually am is peace. It's tranquility. It is contentment and satisfaction and fulfillment. And the more I rested in myself, in that environment of peace, the more my body remembered its natural state. And it roots out all of the trauma, the fear, the anxiety, whatever you have. I had confusion. I was miserable. And this message and this practice set me free. And it's all I want for you. All I want is for you to feel the love of yourself again. That you can be comfortable and in your own skin and just enjoy where you are all the time, no matter what is happening in your life. And it is possible, but it does take apparent effort of turning your attention within and seating yourself in yourself. And in that, self starts to shine through from the core, from the source out. And you remember that you are unconditional love and acceptance. May this graphic representation bring you back to peace and the love of yourself. Let's assume that this light yellow cylinder represents totality. Totality is all there is. It has no boundaries. It doesn't have a beginning, a middle, or an end. We cannot represent that in this world because we always need boundaries to represent something. But for now, that this cylinder will represent our self. Self is totality. Self is the one substance in all of totality. So totality is awareness. And totality is I am. Awareness is I am. And therefore anything that is known by our senses arises out of this one substance of awareness. And this presentation is going to walk us through how this world manifests so that we understand what the root of the problem is for those of us who are suffering, how we get underneath this root, and the source then shines through, and that's when healing begins. So everything that we're going to talk about here stems from the teachings of Advaita Vedanta and primarily from the teachings of Ramana Maharshi. It's his knowledge that is the understanding on how all of this works. So out of self arises the egoic I. It is known as the I thought or the original thought. So it is the thought, I am this body. That is the original thought that creates all of the manifestation that we know. And again, this thought is the thought, I am this body. And from here, the ego builds a body. So from the ego arises the will. This is our known as our vasanas. These are the seeds that create everything that we know about ourselves and about our world. Our vasanas are our tendencies or inclinations to move us away from ourself. They're all outward actions. So everything that we know other than ourself arises from this, you could say, pushing of these vasanas out of the self and into the world. From here arises our intellect. Our intellect is our likes and dislikes, our discerns, our judgment, our reasoning, our biases all come from our intellect. And then from the intellect arises the mind. This is the egoic mind. This is the egoic I. The egoic I is the mind that we believe we are. We think that we're a mind and a body. And therefore, out of the egoic mind arises the energy and then the physical body. So we take ourselves to be a physical body that has a mind. And from here, this is what we call the body. These blue cells are the body. And of course, we know that this body has 5 senses. Our seeing, our smelling, tasting, hearing, and touch. And from out of here, these 5 senses project the world. So it is with the senses that the world is known. So everything in Advaita is only true if you can experience directly and inherently. Okay, well, apply this to this diagram, right? If you take your 5 senses away, is there a world? No. If you take your body away, is there 5 senses? No. If you take the energy away, is there a body? No. If you take the mind away, how would you know you had a body? So you can see that you can apply everything in Advaita to this diagram. This is how the world manifests from the self. And this is, our attention is going out, right? All of these arrows going up represent attention. And so our attention is moving out away from ourself. But here we're saying we're turning our attention around and we're going to dive back in all the way down to self. We're going to bypass all of these layers of the manifestation and go directly to the source with our attention. And we're going to rest in the source with our attention. And the longer we rest there, the more we remember who we actually are, which is the peace and love and joy and beauty that we're after, especially those of us who are significantly suffering. And this is known as the direct path. You could say it's spiritual bypassing. You bypass everything and you go right to the answer, right to the goal. And if I back up here for a minute, meditation, mindfulness, transcendental meditation, it only goes to the egoic mind, and it works on the egoic mind. It soothes the egoic mind. It tries to manipulate it into being a better mind. But as you see, this doesn't get to the source. This is why meditation, it does work temporarily. We can agree to that. But it doesn't eliminate the problem. It doesn't eliminate those deep feelings you have within you, the sense of like, I just can't get to it. But that's why Advaita and self-inquiry and the direct path get you there. So as you rest more and more down here, what happens is self starts to erode this process from the source out. So it's like it's chewing away as it's moving up. So it starts to eliminate this sense of I am the body. And it starts to chew into the vasanas, the seeds. And so anytime one of these levels is weakened, it weakens the other one above it. So it just starts to weaken and weaken and weaken. And what this means to you is that you experience peace. This is starting to come through you, and you are experiencing this directly as yourself, as who you are. And the moment you taste this, it's all over. I mean, you're gonna, that you have found the solution to your suffering. And, the egoic mind, once this chatterbox, this monkey mind, this source of all just doubt and dis-ease and agitation and irritation, that's just known as peace. And it works into the energy, so it starts to drop this sense of energy out of you, but not like joy. There's still joy there. You don't just have no energy. You actually start to gain more energy because you are starting to experience peace. And then the physical body, the sense of it. And I'm going to come back to the body here in a minute. The body doesn't go away. You just stop identifying with it. And because the mind has relaxed, it sends the signal to the body, hey, everything's okay. We're remembering that who we are. And in that who we are, your body remembers, oh, I don't need to be in fear anymore. So you start to lose that as well. And then the five senses die away and the world dies away. This is where oneness starts to come into play, where you still see the world. There's still a body and there's still the five senses in the world, but nobody has that body. This is the end of the individual within this body. Self has no idea what an individual is. And an individual, thinking you're an individual, is what has caused all of the issues in our life. That it's the sense of separation. But the world is still here. It's just not separate from you anymore. And this again is known as peace. This world isn't something you need to manipulate anymore. And as you sit in here longer and longer, what happens is the attention goes to self. So you see how the cylinder went from light yellow, which represented we weren't paying attention to it, to a dark yellow, which means that's all our attention is on, is ourself. All we know is ourself. All we know is that peace and love and joy. And what happens is once your attention is on self, the ego literally starts to die away and everything goes with it, all the way up through the mind. The mind is gone. And that may seem freaky at first, and I understand that because it kind of freaked me out at first when I understood what this message was about. But the experience of the absence of mind is known as peace. That's it. Everything is still here. I am still here. I am always been who I have been. It's just this mind didn't have any part in it. And you could say that the world, this body and five senses and world, I don't have these anymore. You don't have these anymore. They are in you. All there is self. All there is peace. And within that, the world is happening within that. It's quite joyful. It's awe. It's like it's a childlike sense of awe again. And so this is how you get underneath that horrible sense within you, is you dip down into self, and self starts to eliminate that. And it will eliminate it. You will know inherently that it's never coming back because you have the answer. You can always continue to dip into self. And all that remains is self, which is I am, or awareness. And I'd like to leave you from a a quote from Ramana Maharshi when a devotee asked him, "How can we help to change our individual suffering?" Ramana replies, "Realize the real self. It is all that is necessary." That's it. Your job, all you have to do is turn your attention and rest in self. Nothing more is asked. Nothing more is asked. Self will take the load from there. It will start to do the work from there. It will carry all of the burdens. It will start to shine itself through the suffering, through the trauma, through the fear, through the anxiety, and it will melt it and it will dissolve it until it does not remain. May this help you in realizing the true you. The true you is unconditional love. Take care.